Good evening and welcome again to Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. And for those who've lived in Chicago for a while will know there are a lot of hidden treasures around our city. And one of them, we'll be talking about tonight, is the Lizzadro Museum of Lapidary Art. And if you don't know what that is, well, we're going to tell you. Because our guest tonight, Dorothy Asher, the director of the Museum of Lapidary Art, the Lizzadro Museum. So welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
So the first question is going to be lapidary. Most people don't have that in their vocabulary. So what is that? What does it mean, and why is there a museum for it?
So lapidary is the art of cutting and polishing stone or working with stone, and that is what our museum is dedicated to. It's dedicated to stone. So it's a very unusual place.
Yes.
And you said you've been there, so...
Actually, I've been there several times. It's a wonderful place. I won't say it's very unusual.
Thank you.
I'd say it's quite wonderful.
Thank you.
It's something, and it is when I introduced this as a little jewel, it is one of those places that you kind of have to know about. And once you're there, you think, wow, why doesn't everyone know about this?
Yes, and really our biggest advertiser is word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
We do minimal advertising, but you know, we've been there so long that people come back or they come in for a particular program, or their children are interested in stone, and that's what brings people in.
And we're going to show a little later, we'll show some photos of things, because when we think about, well, a museum of stone, does that mean you've got big granite walls? Or but really it's stone carving, right?
Yes.
So examples of things that are works of art carved in some manner of stone, right?
And more in particular, our museum focuses on hard stone carvings. Mm-hmm. And so that's really not marble. Marble is not a hard stone. So when you think about big sculptures and things like Michelangelo's David's sculpture, that's marble. So ours is hard stone, and that is it's carved totally differently than softer stone.
So what's a hard stone? Is jade a harder stone?
Yes, jade is a hard stone. So a hard stone cannot be scratched with metal. And so it needs to be ground away by a harder stone.
Interesting. So what kind of tools? I mean, is it diamonds, or what do you use to carve?
Yes, so diamond would cut stone like an agate, or jade. Corundum, which is ruby or sapphire, would also cut a lot of stones. Anything in the quartz family. So that's how it works. So diamond saws would cut almost anything.
Yes, even through cut to the chase.
And they would cut diamond too.
Oh,
yes.
Well, that's interesting. So diamond, you would use diamond to cut diamond.
Yes.
Are there different qualities of diamond where you would need a particular quality that's harder than the one you're trying to cut?
Well, it's kind of a directional hardness with diamond. So that's how they cut other diamonds, is with diamonds.
Ah, well, because I have seen on television, I've seen things like how the planning of if a particularly large raw diamond is found, and the planning for how to cut it just right and what to make of it, which, as I understand, can take a year or more of just figuring out how to cut this particular gemstone.
Yes.
Right. But I never thought about what they use to cut the hardest material, so it's more of the hardest material.
Right. Well, actually, diamonds have perfect cleavage, so they actually can hit the diamond in a particular way to get it to break evenly in a certain shape. So that's why they have to study the stone. So diamond has a very specific atomic structure and the way it breaks.
So is there, I guess in light you'd call it a polarity, but there's a directionality to it?
Yes.
Right? So the crystal structure has some sort of directionality where you can see that it'll split along this line, and maybe not along this line, which would be perpendicular to it, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, coming back to the museum, which I think is a fascinating place, actually, we have a video clip of a little bit of the history, which I think would be good to start with. Okay. So let's see if we can roll that video about the history of the museum. And then afterward, I've got some questions for you that we'll want to talk to you about that particular history and your connection to that history, because you have a personal connection to it, right?
Yes.
I think most anywhere you go in the country today, whether it's a river bottom or along the beaches of the ocean or the lakes, there's something to be found that would cut into some form of a gemstone.
Joseph Lizzadro, Chicago business leader. His passion for art and nature was born in his native Italy. Son of a cobbler, he learned the craft of lapidary as an adult. His hobby became a legacy when Mr. Lizzadro was looking for raw jade to make cufflinks. A Chinese dealer sent him a carved bottle for use, but he thought it too beautiful to cut. Instead, it became the first piece in a priceless collection of art objects, mineral specimens, gems, and gem materials. Through objects of beauty and wonder across ancient and modern culture, explore the world of lapidary art.
I'm Joe Lizzadro, and I welcome you to the museum.
So that was a video of your grandfather,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you come from a long lineage of stone,
Yes,
stone carvers and stone appreciators, right?
Yes. We love stone.
Yeah. Do you yourself carve? Have you ever carved the stone?
I have tried carving and cabochon cutting both, as that's what he was doing there in that video. But I don't actually do it now. I would love to do it when I retire.
Right. But right now you have to run a museum. Right?
Yes.
Yes, I understand. That's a full-time job.
Yes.
So before we go too much further, there's also another video we have that I think we want to show, and that's a little bit of a very short demo of what's involved in this stone cutting, because it's not an easy thing to do. It's hard.
Right.
Right?
Yes. It takes time.
So let's see if we can call up that video, and we'll get a little bit of what it looks like to actually carve the stone itself.
For more than 5,000 years, Chinese carvers have prized one stone above others. Strong, subtle, translucent, colorful, believed to promote wisdom, balance, and peace.
And they're talking about jade.
Jade,
right?
yes, and we
Right.
have a very large collection of Chinese jade carvings, mainly Qing Dynasty, which would be 1644 to 1912 at
That's
the
how long the
museum.
Qing Dynasty lasted.
Yes,
See, I
very,
don't know my
yes.
Chinese history very well.
A long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And really it was the zenith of jade carving. So some of the most beautiful works were done at that time.
Now, one of the things I saw that I thought was interesting was carvings from one era that were redone in another era. And I thought that was so fascinating to see how themes were replayed in later eras.
Yes, they often repeated styles in carving, and many times they started in bronze and then repeated the same style in jade.
So what jade is imbued with some sort of mystical properties, isn't it, in Asian culture?
Yes, they really do consider it a very special stone, really more precious than gold.
Really? So collecting jade then, and actually I've noticed if you go to the museum, there are always security guards there because these are valuable things. All right. So how do pieces come to you at the museum? How do you discover them? How do you bring them in?
Well, many of the pieces were collected by Joseph Lizzadro at auction first. And so he amassed a very large collection and opened the museum. And today we still do add to the collection in different ways. Sometimes we add more modern lapidary work from different cultures, different places. And sometimes we get donations that are very significant pieces that we do put on display.
Actually, we're going to see one of those later, the pagoda.
Yes.
Yes. Do you solicit donations, or are you well known enough now in the world of lapidary art that people know about you and send things your way?
Yes, people do contact us often about either donations or to purchase a piece.
Do you sell from the collection? Oh no, they want you to purchase it, right?
Right. People ask us if we would like to purchase a piece. Often we don't. Often we say we are a nonprofit public charity, and if you'd like to donate the piece, and really we do get a lot of donations.
Joseph himself passed away how many years ago?
In 1972.
Okay, so the museum was opened in '62?
Yes.
For 10 years, this was his
Yeah.
private collection that he could go and see.
Yeah, it was really his project. He really enjoyed sharing the museum, the collection, sharing his knowledge of stone, and having programs where people could come and learn more about stone. That was really his passion. So he really enjoyed that, and he worked, up until the day he died. So he was very involved with the museum for 10 years.
Was he still carving stone up until the end?
I think he was, yes. I think he was still doing cabochon cutting. He found that a very relaxing hobby after...
Now that word, cabochon?
Cabochon cutting is what he was doing in the video.
What is that?
That is basically the shaping of a stone, so I'm kind of wearing a cabochon here. It's usually a flat side with a dome top, and it's usually an opaque stone or a stone that has pattern in it, like this agate here on the table.
Yeah, since you pointed to it, let's talk about this agate for a moment. So first of all, what is agate? What makes something agate?
Agate is a variety of quartz. So it is a hard stone. So it's a 7 on the scale of hardness, and you can see it takes a nice high polish, and that's typical of a hard stone. A hard stone's going to take a high polish. It's going to be durable.
Now, when you polish it, to get that kind of shine, is it just a matter of continually buffing the stone until the shine comes out? There's no additives or anything, right?
No, but they use grit. The grit would, so they use successively finer grits till they finally get to the finest grit to give it the highest polish possible.
Well, I think in fact, I'm going to turn it around so that we can see what it looks like before it's polished. And it looks like it could be almost a meteorite at that point, right?
You know, or just a common rock. Most people wouldn't know what it was. You might walk right by it, you know. But you can see little areas of color and maybe little areas where it looks a little different. Maybe it's been water worn, and it looks like it's a little bit polished. And then your eye might catch it as you're walking along. You may say, that looks different than the other stones. And then you might just pick it up. And then you might get your knife blade out and try and scratch it.
Except if it's a hard stone, you can't scratch it with
right,
with the knife,
exactly.
Right?
So if your knife blade doesn't scratch it, you say, hey, this is a hard stone, and maybe I'm going to take this with me. Put it in my pack and then take it home and cut it. Cut it with your diamond saw and see how it cuts.
Yes, and since all of us have that diamond saw in the basement, right?
Yes.
Just waiting for the right point to use it. So I'm assuming you need to have a fairly well-trained eye to spot these stones.
Yes, it does take a trained eye, and we actually have collecting trips at the museum, mainly for fossils, because that's mostly what we have here in Illinois. But we always tell people, you know, it's about, often children will see the stones or the fossils first, because they just have that eye. Maybe they're a little closer to the ground, but they're looking, they're maybe a little more keen on what they're seeing. And it does take a trained eye to find the stones.
Interesting. I mean, I'll speculate, because I have no knowledge of this whatsoever, but that's never stopped me in the past. So I'll just speculate that children probably are more attuned to new things, and they look more closely because so much is new. So and I think as we get older, we filter things out unconsciously. So we could easily pass over something, whereas a child is looking at everything as though it's the first time to be seen.
I think that's very true. Yes. Yes, so we might just see an old rock, you know, a child will say, hey, I see a little color in that.
It looks interesting.
Yeah.
Let me examine that further.
And often children have a real interest in stones, usually from a particular age, usually 6 or 7 on up to about 10.
And then they lose it?
Some children will lose that interest, and others don't. It's a lifelong interest in stone, and a lot of those people come to the museum.
Yeah. Well, I can't say that I have had that lifelong interest, but when I came to the museum the first time, and I've been there several times, it's just such a fascinating place to see all the things that are done with stone. And we'll show a couple of photos later. But let's talk a little bit about the museum itself, because you're in the process of a big change here. You're going to be moving.
Yes, we are moving from Elmhurst to Oak Brook. We've been in Elmhurst for 56 years, and we have been thinking about this for years. We've had public meetings and discussions, and finally it was determined that we would move to Oak Brook. We purchased a building in Oak Brook, and that's where our home will be in the fall of 2019.
So what's the advantage? What do you get in Oak Brook that you couldn't get in Elmhurst?
Well, we are really picking up additional space that we need, that we don't have here in Elmhurst. We will have a special exhibit area. So right now when we try to do a special exhibit, we actually have to take pieces off display. And as you can imagine, trying to move some of these carvings just off and on display is not a task that anyone really wants to do. But so we are always wanting to bring in new exhibits and changing things up like that. So we will have additional space for that. We'll have a research library for scholars that come in to study particular stones and the carvings.
Well, so there are stones that are famous. I mean, so I'm thinking a researcher would come in to study. Would they study about particular stones or about the art of stone carving, or what would be the
It can be
focus?
all of those. It could be about the particular jade carvings, which we are still interpreting and still researching today, because really it's relatively new. This particular era of carving, it wasn't well studied. A lot of the archaic pieces were studied, but this particular time period was not. And so a lot of new information has come out on this in recent years.
Well, such as, what do they discover? What are some of the interesting things they
Well,
discover about this
how
era?
the stones were carved, where the material came from, what kind of workshops, how they were actually traded and sold and put on the market. Lots of different ways they can be studied, what they mean. They're full of symbolism.
So the carving, because there's a tradition of carving, that there are certain symbols that are repeated.
Yes.
Right?
And many of the carvings actually were given as gifts. So they might have been a birthday gift, or a wedding gift, or you know, wishing somebody good fortune. So all could be religious Buddhist symbols on the carving. So all of that can be studied.
Well, we've got a couple of photos of things. We'll see if we can bring up some of the photos of some of the exhibits that are on display currently, and will continue to be on display at the new new facility, which, by the way, is in April of 2020, did you say?
We'll be moving to opening in Oak Brook in the fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019, okay.
Yes.
All right, so yes, right, it seems like a long way.
Yeah, we'll be in
Right around the
Elmhurst
corner.
through
Okay.
part of 2019.
Well, we'll see if we can get up some of the still shots here, and you can talk us through. So this is the pagoda, right?
This is a new piece that actually was awarded to us from the museum in Oakland, California. And this is a 6-foot-high pagoda. And it's a pagoda palace. It's 7 feet wide. It's a huge piece.
Yeah, you know, and you can't tell from the photo, really.
Yes, you cannot
what
tell from the
scale is.
photo.
Right.
But it's a massive piece. This is the Rock Cafe, which is really a fun exhibit that's actually currently on exhibit at the museum. It's a whole meal. It's 3 meals. This is just the breakfast.
So everything on this plate
is
is
stone.
made of stone, right? Yeah, and you look like that's entirely edible.
Yes.
So, for example, the bacon, is that a piece of stone that has that kind of striation in it, or would that be pieced together? Is that a mosaic
No, that's actually a piece of stone.
that has those striations? And when
Yes.
you cut it a certain way, it looks just like a strip of
Yes,
bacon?
it's actually a piece of onyx marble.
Oh, okay. And the eggs are what? Actually, if we can come back to that for a moment. The eggs.
The eggs are dolomite and yellow onyx.
And
And
what's
the grits are aragonite. It's aragonite crystal, actually. It's one big clump crystal.
Is the toast in the basket? Is
Yeah, that
stone?
is petrified wood.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
How much
And in the goblet, which is alabaster, is salt for the milk.
Okay, and it looks like there's a little fruit salad off to one side.
Yes, and those are little serpentine grapes, and I think it's other pieces of onyx.
Fascinating that you can create this sort of
Yeah,
thing out of stone.
it's kind of found objects that people put together, and they create these meals made of stone.
So it seems like an odd sub-niche of artistry.
It
but
is,
It's
it
really
is.
cool when you see it.
It is really neat.
Okay, and then if we can see the next one. Now this is a little out of proportion. That you can describe what we're looking at here.
So this is the ivory puzzle ball, and it's 24 spheres that are carved internally, kind of like a Rubik's Cube of the late 19th century, I guess. But it's a beautiful piece.
Now this is one of the most fascinating pieces I've ever seen, and I think my first visit, this is what so captured my attention, because it is, I mean, and this photo distorts it a bit, but it's a perfect sphere, and as you've said, there are 24 layers to it, each of which can be rotated individually.
Yes.
Right, so this had to be carved in a way that you could create 24 concentric spheres that would all rotate smoothly, and each sphere is intricately carved like this.
Yes.
Now this is made of ivory, right, which is
Yes.
a soft stone, right?
It's an organic gem, and so you know, people say, how can it be an organic gem? Well, there's a lot of organic gems, including amber and coral, which is right next to it there. And so ivory, and this is an older carving, but it's a wonderful material to carve.
What era would this be from?
This is late 19th century.
Okay. And do you have any sense of how much time and effort, how long did it take to create this particular object? Do you know?
You know, it's hard to say with this. It could have taken a year, maybe 2 years. The ivory, because it is softer and it can be carved with metal, so it wouldn't take as long to carve as jade. But still, could have taken a year or more. It does have a lot of intricate design on it.
And this would have been created as a gift for someone, or maybe a royalty? Or
Possibly for trade.
I wonder what you would trade that for.
Well, to the Europeans, so it was something that might have been of interest to Europeans. So the Chinese would make these puzzle balls,
right,
and then sell them.
A fascinating piece, and actually anyone who hasn't seen it in person, I have to encourage them to go and check that out.
Yes.
Because it's really a beautiful piece. And there are so many beautiful pieces. And now, how do you decide what needs to be on display when? I always wonder about this with museums, because there's such a wealth of art in the collection. How do you determine, well, gee, what do we show this week or this month?
Well, always it's the quality of the material and the quality of craftsmanship or carving or artistry. So we always look at those aspects of a piece.
For any pieces you're going to display, but
Yes.
Are there particular themes or shows, like if you would go to the Art Institute, for example, there would be a display by a certain, or range of paintings by a certain artist or sculpture by a certain artist. Are there themes to the shows that you mount as well?
Yes, there are. Yes.
Such as?
So, well, like right now we have a few Russian carvings that were specifically done, and they're modern Russian carvings with all Russian materials. And so that would have a theme of all just Russian, no Chinese. And then we've done several other shows, like also right now the Rock Cafe, which is really its own special exhibit. Again, our special exhibits have to be small.
Because of the lack of space?
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons you're going to move to a larger facility, right? Yeah, so how long is the Rock Cafe?
That'll be up through the spring.
Through the spring, okay. And is it just the 3 meals, or is it multiple?
It's 3 meals.
3 meals, breakfast,
That's
lunch,
all.
and dinner. Yeah, that's enough. That's a full day's worth of food, right?
Yeah.
So are those all things that came to you as gifts, or did you solicit those?
Actually, that was donated to us by a woman who lived in North Riverside. And she's now deceased, but she kindly donated that to us because we displayed it so many times. People loved it, and so it comes out often, and people will come back and say, "Where's the Rock Cafe?"
I'm hungry. What is that?
Yeah, people love to show their children.
Well, I'm sure the kids must get a real kick out of that. Yeah. So you do special programs for children as well, right?
Yes, we do. We do rock and mineral identification. We do jewelry making for children. We have collecting field trips. We have many. We have at least two programs a month, not just for children though, also for adults. We recently had a program on Chinese symbolism in carving, and that was very interesting. So we try to bring in lecturers or artists. Sometimes we have demonstrators or workshops. So we do all of those things.
I would love to see some of the demonstrations where they actually will show you what it's like to actually work, especially with the hard stone. I mean, in one of the photos, or actually I think in the video, what we were seeing was people working with, treadle, foot treadle tools in order to do this. And I think about, jade that has to be cut with diamonds, with foot-powered instruments, and how long that would, and how
it can take years.
Focused you'd have to be to get it just right.
Yes. So that pagoda we showed, that took 10 years to create that piece.
And you said that's a fairly modern piece? That
was done in the early 20th century.
Okay. For a particular purpose?
That actually was a commissioned piece by T. Wen Chang. And so he was a Shanghai art dealer, and he had that piece created.
For himself?
Well, it was probably actually to sell or to market in some way, but it did appear at the Chicago World's Fair in 1933.
Really?
So it was on display then. So it's very fitting that it comes back to Chicago.
Sure. Where was it in the interim? Between
It
the
was
World's Fair?
actually it went to the Oakland Museum of California.
And why? I mean, it seems to me a piece like that that's so significant. Why would a museum like the Oakland Museum decide that, well, we've had this long enough, let's give it to somebody else? What would prompt that kind of transaction?
Well, I think they felt they could not permanently display the piece. And so they put out an RFP to
find a home
find
for
a
it?
home for it of somebody who would permanently display it. And because we do have a big permanent display of the jade, we were selected.
Oh, so it was a competitive process.
It was
Oh.
a competitive process, yes.
Congratulations.
Yes,
that you,
thank you.
that you won that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so is that particular piece on display now, or are you waiting for the
No,
new
it is
location?
not, no.
Okay.
We have to actually build a special case for it. And it will be on display at the new museum, though.
I can't wait.
Oh, thank you.
Right. So what kinds of things are going on right now that are of interest to people who
Well,
come visit
coming
you?
up, we have Lapidary Day in November. We have several free events throughout the year, community events. So Lapidary Day is where the West Suburban Lapidary Club members demonstrate at the museum, so you can see them doing the actual different forms of lapidary art. And then we also have demonstrators during Art in the Park, which is in May. And Museum Day, we also have activities that's also in May.
Isn't every day Museum Day?
Well, Museum Day actually for the Elmhurst museums.
Ah, okay.
So that always comes up in May. And there's many programs going on, throughout the year.
You also have a free day, right? So Fridays are free?
Yes.
So anyone who...
Every Friday is free at this time, yes.
So if you want to just go check it out and see what's there. you
Yeah,
can,
if you're not
okay.
sure about the museum, a lot of people come in, they're not sure what it's about, if they're going to be interested, and they come in on a Friday, and they're not disappointed.
Now, you're just a few hundred yards down from the Elmhurst Art Museum right now.
Yes.
Are they going to miss you when you're gone?
I think the museums will miss us. I mean,
Yeah.
we've worked together for many years, like I say, that Museum Day, that's going to be hard to duplicate in
Sure, you'll
Oak
be
Brook,
in
but
Oak
we
Brook.
will find something. I think we might do a cultural day or something like that.
Something that you guys can organize and put
Yes.
into place, right? And it will be the culture of stone carving?
Or just, celebrating different cultures, because all cultures work with stone.
Well, on that note, I will encourage all of our viewers to experience some stone culture and come see the Lizzadro Museum. It's a great place. And,
Thank you.
Dorothy, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us once again on Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. You can find us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19 or see us on the web at publicperspective.tv. So until next time, thank you and good night.